Plenty of teams still in the hunt for the SEC championship. Let's dive in and talk about those teams.
Welcome to the Pigskin Cafe, a podcast where Hampton, Chase, and Graham break down all things college football. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
They have to win this game.
There's a problem. This one's tough.
We are back.
That's what my guts tell me.
I genuinely could not believe it.
You don't live in the great state of Texas.
All right, big boy. Hold my sweet tea.
What are we doing?
That is a stat there, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, welcome back to the Pigskin Cafe. If this is your first time listening, we would just like for you to go ahead and pause this and like and subscribe to the video. Go ahead and look on our socials at the Pigskin Cafe. We love to keep you guys up to date, but really enjoy grabbing your questions. And today we've got a really fun episode where we're going to talk about all the teams that are still right there in the hunt for the SEC championship, which is coming on to us fast. And I've got my good friend, Preston Abbott, who's jumping in with us. And Preston, I think just the best way to probably set the scene for why we're asking you to come on to this podcast would be for you to tell a little bit of kind of where you went to school and how you got your current job.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So it's a fun story. I went to Texas A&M University, studied sports management for 4 years. And so I think really I work in the business side of sports, specifically ticketing. But I graduated in 2020 when it was like the worst time possible for someone to enter a sports career. The benefit of being at A&M at the time is I got to, I was there during the Jimbo Fisher era, got to see a little bit of the behind the scenes of that, and got the first taste of Mike Elko. And then just in 2020, I needed something to do sports-wise, so I started my own football podcast. That, through means of connections, actually ended in front of the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs, who also owns the soccer team in Frisco where I work. And I broke down the Mahomes contract at the time, which was, I think, a $500 million, 12-year, $500 million extension. This is a really big thing, or it was a really big thing. I had a really good thesis of what I talked about. He liked it enough to offer me a job. And so I did that and kind of just love sports and football on the business side. My senior thesis was actually about NIL and how A&M could incorporate it into their football department, or how I think they should. Which has been fun to see how all of that's gotten to work out. And now we're here at the most exciting, I think probably the most exciting college football season I think we've had since probably 2007, which was another insane year. So it's going to be pretty crazy how everything finishes out this season for sure.
Totally. Hey, we've got teams that we thought were going to be good that have turned out not to be so good. And we've had teams that we're supposed to be bad. I mean, like Vanderbilt, who are almost running the table over here. So, man, we've got a lot to talk about. And again, if you're listening to this, Preston did go to A&M. That's obviously why we have him on the podcast. When we did invite him, Hampton, Hampton, I need to tell you this before, Preston would know this. When I was talking to him about literally being on this podcast, none other than baby Gronk and his dad were sitting behind us in the booth. And that's another story for another day of just what all we talked about. But it was just hilarious that's another thing. That's the second time that's happened to me and Preston whenever we've been eating lunch. Somebody's inserting themselves into our conversation. But I was asking him to come on this podcast. And this was before, and we're recording this on a Sunday. So A&M did play last night against South Carolina. And so How about we start right? How about we start? Let's start like this. Preston, give us the story of A&M before this game. We'll break down the game because Hampton, I want to bring you in just what you saw, what you think is worth pointing out. But Preston, just give us kind of the storyline of Mike Elko coming to be the new head coach at Texas A&M. Are you excited? Not excited? And then just how the season has gone up until now.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. If you're asking me personally, I was really excited when he came back. So I think through the Jimbo Fisher era from like probably 2018 through 2020 when Mike was the DC there, everyone loved Mike. We probably had one of the better defenses in the country, especially in 2020. I think we finished top 8 or top 10 in total defense under him. And he's just probably the best adjuster in the game is the best way I can explain it. He's The person I compare him to, which might after last night might now seem over, but I do want to stick to it, is I think he's like Andy Reid when it comes to that, which is he's not afraid and has the ability to adjust on the fly. I think you saw that during LSU. There's only one guy I wanted more than him, which was Dan Campbell, which was just a hope and a prayer.
Pipe dream.
That's a pipe. Hey, listen, he's from the university. He played here. Like you hope that my dream scenario was that he would go get him, the Bears DC Aaron Glenn, who is another Aggie, and then Gerard Johnson, who is the quarterback coach for the Houston Texans, who is also an Aggie, and just, hey, we're going to come home and try and win one for the boys. It was pretty evident that wasn't going to happen, but this was my second one, and I think everyone was happy with it because the guy they threw out there before was Mark Stoops. And the Mark Stoops era lasted less than 24 hours. I still hang my pitchfork up in my room from that night. But I don't think any Aggie can be upset. I think a lot of people are upset this morning. I don't think any Aggie can be upset at how this has gone. Like, we've defeated two, at the time, top 10 opponents at home. I would think we have probably one of the most well-balanced and well-rounded coaching staffs in the country. And having Colin Klein, who's a good OC, Jay Bateman, who I think just understands what Elsko wants to do on defense, which is the most important thing you want from your defensive coordinator when you have a defensive head coach. And then probably the best coach in college football is on our roster in Tommy Moffitt, which is the strength and conditioning coach. If anyone who's familiar with him, he's been before he was at A&M, he was the strength and conditioning coach for LSU for like two decades. And so he's a program winner. And then you get some other guys who's been with the program, like Tony Gerard Eddy was with A&M. He learned under Terry Price, who's probably one of the best defensive end coaches, or was one of the best defensive end coaches before he passed away. And then you have guys like Ishmael Armistad, who has done incredible stuff with the secondary and has been at A&M for a while. And then Adam Cushing, who was the Duke offensive line coach, who is an incredible, like, that's a guy who I think that was without a doubt probably our worst position towards the end of the Fisher era. Like, I don't have enough bad things to say about Steve Adazio as a coach. Because of just how bad it is, but that jump has been huge. And there's still a lot that has to be done, but you have to love the way we're way ahead of schedule.
Oh yeah,
and
totally.
Like, everyone, if you had asked the general public that you think Mike Elko could win Coach of the Year in year one, like no one would have said yes. But that's where we're at as right now. He's still very much in the running for that this season.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. Hey, one of the names I didn't hear you say is the Wiggum guy that we sent over to be our wide receiver coach.
I'm almost positive I mentioned Holman Wiggins. And so I think Holman's got a hard job. He really does. A&M doesn't have a ton of receiver talent. And in fact, we lost probably one of the best receivers in the country to Oregon. I think that ultimately was a good thing because I don't think he fits the culture that Elko wanted to establish. The inside information on that is the reason, like, the narrative around A&M in the offseason, they lost all these big guys, specifically Walter Nolan, who was a big, like, the number one prospect in his recruiting class, and then Evan Stewart. The reason they left is because they got kicked out of the first meeting because they showed up late, allegedly, and Elko locked the door. So I think you have to be, if that's the case, then, like, you can't get mad at a guy for wanting to establish his culture early and, like, hey, no players above the law. And so I think Holman's got a really hard job now where he kind of got left with a bare cupboard and he had to do a lot of work. Like, we added, I believe, 2 receivers in the portal, and Jabri Barber and Cyrus Allen, who were fine receivers, but in terms of, like, the elite they do some great things, but neither of them are what you ultimately want to replace with Evan, who was a barn burner in terms of speed, and we just don't have that. So you have to find ways to get guys open. And he's got a lot. He's probably, out of all the coaches, he's probably got the most work to do, currently got the most work to do, which is just a tall ask. So hopefully he lives up to the hype that he did at Alabama.
Yeah. Hampton, let me get your reaction to some of this, and
Yeah.
I want you at first, I guess, react to it, and then I want you maybe just to compare and contrast style wise, mentality wise, everything that Kalen DeBoer has done at Alabama. Just you're seeing two new coaches, and when I say new, but just Elko's been in the SEC before. Yeah, I talk about that second, but I really want you just to react to A&M season, all the kind of coaching breakdown that he did. Kind of give us the your reaction to that.
Well, before I do, I want to say wonderful breakdown on everything that's happening with A&M and through that transition from Jimbo to Elko, which I think our podcast was really ahead of the curve when it came to Jimbo needing to be gone from Texas A&M. I think a lot of people kept clinging to that 2013 national championship as a sign of hope that he was a fantastic coach and he was going to get it turned around. And I just personally, with his lack of willingness to adapt to the modern college football offense, and then also just some mind-boggling coaching decisions, their lack of toughness, from game to game in key critical junctures, I think it was time to move on. And I think that's something that Elko has really infused into that program. And it's something that was really apparent when they played LSU. You're down 17-7, and in that moment, you don't flinch. You fight tooth and nail to get back in the game. And he has the guts to sit down his starting quarterback and put in Marcel Reed, give his team a spark, and it ultimately paid off. I mean, they went on a 31-6 run, and that was really, really impressive. And as much as I think Kalen DeBoer has done a pretty good job at Alabama this year, I think that is something that is missing. I think it's kind of slowly maybe getting there in the past 2 or 3 games from the defensive side of the ball, of a little more physicality and a little more intensity that the team is playing with overall. But I feel like even in the first game against Notre Dame, because Notre Dame is very much that type of physical, intense, fly around, knock your head off type of team, and A&M matched that in the first game. I know that they didn't ultimately win it, but they still showed that they went toe-to-toe with them. And to me, that's the biggest difference between the two. It's kind of I think A&M plays with a little more physical edge, especially defensively. Now, it did not show last night, which I know we'll get into here in a minute. We'll get into that here in a minute. And then another thing that I think you touched on, I thought was great, and I think it may have hurt this season, but it's going to help in the long run. Kicking Walter Nolan and Evan Stewart out, even though they're the two most talented players on your roster, because no one is above the team. I think somewhat on Alabama, that's been a little bit of an issue, not holding guys accountable when their play isn't up to the level it needs to be on the field, or not doing the little things right off of it. And there's not been consequences for those actions. And I think that has led to some undisciplined play at times that's really come back to hurt Alabama in key critical moments, especially, even in wins, but especially against Vandy and Tennessee. So that would be my answer to your question, Chase. And I'll give one more point, and then I'll kick it back to you. Mm-hmm. I know you mentioned Holman Wiggins. I liked Holman when he was at Alabama. I defended him. But it's not a good sign when the new receiver coach comes in from Washington, Jamarcus Shepard, who got 3 guys drafted last year with Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, and McMillan. And he talks about, I had to basically come in here and teach these guys how to learn how to run routes.
Yeah.
Not a great look. And obviously, Holman in 2022, he didn't develop his room very well. In 2021, the same thing. A couple guys went down, and the freshmen weren't ready. And I think that's partly due to him. But maybe with a fresh start at Texas A&M, he can get the job done. But, Chase, I'll kick it back to you, man.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fair analysis, and I guess Preston, before we move on, like any reaction to Hampton's reaction of his analysis of the A&M program, anything that you'd add to that?
Yeah, no, I think he's almost hit it on the nail. I would say in terms of Alabama, I think here's the thing. I think the biggest thing for Mike is establishing the culture, and the reason Aggies love him is he was familiar with A&M. Like, we've had back-to-back coaches, both Jimbo Fisher and before him, Kevin Sumlin, who had essentially no idea what we're about. And, 99% of the general public who isn't involved with A&M has no idea what we're about. It's like that's where you get like all these, oh, it's a cult, and what like these who are these goobers in College Station, Texas, doing all this weird stuff. As one of those goobers, I would say the thing that makes A&M special is its core values and its culture around it. And so you need a guy who understands that. If anything, that's made me happy in the past 3 coaching hires for basketball, I guess now football, and then baseball, and even like some of the smaller ones like volleyball and all of that, is you're hiring people who get it and know how to establish that. Because if the culture around A&M, if you look at all of its values and establish, is a winning culture. Like we have 8 Medal of Honor recipients, we have 2 astronauts, we have a presidential candidate, or we've had a vice president or president library on our campus with I think GHW that's there. We have we produce more CEOs than almost any public university in the country, and so like that's a culture that breeds success, and you want to put that and extend it. It hasn't always extended to our athletic department. And that's something that I like, having a guy who gets it goes there. I would say, honestly, I think Alabama's biggest problem right now is you have a quarterback who doesn't fit your coach's offensive system. That's not, I'm not trying to take shots at Jalen. Jalen does a lot well, but like if you,
Oh, it's fine. We take plenty for you. You're good.
yeah, just like, but to say Jalen is Michael, like if Jalen is Michael Penix, like he's not, and you need a guy who's a precision passer to operate at the highest effectiveness. Like the way I honestly look at it, because Kalen DeBoer, when A&M was looking to hire, A&M was like holding out for him, and he eventually said no because of Washington's championship run, which is why they just moved on. But I think the way it looks is like Kalen DeBoer's offense almost fits like our best quarterback personnel. Whereas like Colin Klein would fit, like the offense he wants to run fits Jalen Milroe almost perfectly. Like that's what Jalen ran in high school at Duncanville here and was incredibly successful at it. So I don't know what you have to do furthermore from that, but I think Kalen's biggest issue going into next year is he's got to find, if Jalen leaves for the draft, which I think everyone thinks he will, you got to find a guy to do that and do that well. Once you do that, I think everything else will start falling in place.
Well,
but
yeah, we've talked, it feels like ad nauseum. It's become increasingly more difficult, and this is where I want to steer. Preston, you did a good job kind of taking us to the more SEC at large picture of it. We've just said what kind of playbook really fits Jalen Milroe.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Lamar Jackson. Like it's like, you got 32 teams in the league, and 31 of them run a certain type of offense that is close to the same. And you've got the Ravens, who run a very unique package that it's like this is curated for Lamar Jackson. And I don't know if that'd be the direct translation, but that's the way that it almost feels, is like we've just seen what his weaknesses are, which has made it tough. So let's talk a little bit more at large for the SEC picture of who's got a chance to play in the SEC championship. And so, Hampton, I want you to just kind of get us kicked off on this conversation. If you will maybe prime this discussion based on, start with who are the teams that are still left in the hunt, and I'll let you, Preston, kind of react, and then we want you, of course, to hear.
Yeah.
Of course, we want to hear you talk a little bit more about A&M. So, Hampton, kick us off. Tell us who's still in the hunt, and maybe add a little bit of color to that.
Yeah, for sure. I think before I dive into that, to his point, all I'll say is I agree that he doesn't fit DeBoer's offense, but I really don't think he fits any offense in a way. And I say that, and I know that's tough. I know tough, and I know a lot of people are going to be upset hearing that, but I say that because what DeBoer is running now is not his offense. I mean, everybody watched Washington last year, and we are very limited in what we can do, I think, because of the quarterback. Then last year, what Tommy Rees ran, that wasn't the Alabama offense, and they tried to cater it to Jalen, and ultimately, in the biggest of moments against the best teams, it wasn't effective because there are certain ways that you can stymie him, primarily blitzing him and confusing the picture and changing the picture from pre to post snap. And then 2022 was another different OC with Bill O'Brien, tried to run another variation of the offense, and he still didn't perform to his max capacity, because I think it's just very hard to tailor a game plan and an offensive system around his strengths because of his limitations. But I don't want to get into a whole big discussion on that. That'll come in the Alabama LSU preview. But on your question, Chase, I think obviously Texas A&M is still in the hunt for the SEC. Tough loss against South Carolina, but I feel like that was just a prime spot where everything kind of came together for South Carolina. They're playing at home. They're coming off a bye week. They got healthy. That's the healthiest they've been in quite a while, and you saw it with how effective Lenore Sellers was, how effective Rocket Sanders was. The tight end Simon had a couple huge plays, and their defense has been great all year, huh?
Oh no, I just said he killed us.
He did, absolutely. And their defense has been great all year. I know people don't associate an elite defense with South Carolina, but they've given everybody issues. Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart. Dylan Stewart, I've been praising on this podcast all year long. Both of those dudes are, I mean, that's probably the best edge tandem in the country. Then you've got Eamon Nori, I think, number 7, who is safety for them. He's really, really good. Their linebackers will come up and hit you. And I thought Texas A&M, honestly, I mean, it was 20-20 at half. They got hit early. They came all the way back. And then South Carolina just kind of pulled away from due to bad tackling, poor tackling on A&M's part, but also some costly turnovers and going for it on 4th and 1 from your own 30 a couple times and it not working out. So I think they're still in the hunt. Georgia definitely is. But I'm telling you, I think Georgia is very gettable this year. Mm-hmm. I think this may be a bold take, and again, ifs, ands, and buts, you know how the saying goes. If DJ Lagway doesn't get hurt yesterday, I think Florida very well beats Georgia. And I say this because they needed a passing game to complement the running game that they had, and they really pushed Georgia off the ball. They were really, really physical in the running game. They did it against Tennessee, too, a few weeks back. I've been really impressed with how, I know we're talking about contenders, but Billy Napier's gotten that team up off the mat. They're playing really, really hard for them and kind of playing their best ball. It's just unfortunate with what happened to them. But Georgia's definitely in there from Beck, even though he's become a turnover machine. Their defense is still really good. Texas, obviously, maybe, I know Georgia beat them, but they are still one of the more well-rounded teams in the league. LSU's got a big matchup versus Alabama. If they win that one, they're going to be sitting pretty in the hunt. Tennessee, great defense, but their offense is very limited. If I had to bet money, and I'm not a gambling man, I wouldn't bet on them getting to Atlanta just primarily because I think their offense is so limited, even though their defense is one of the tops in the country. So I think those 4 to 5 teams are really the ones vying for the SEC championship. I know Alabama can still get there, but a lot would have to fall their way with them having 2 conference losses. Same with Ole Miss, even though they got a prime opportunity this upcoming Saturday versus Georgia. I think this year, honestly, the SEC is as good as it's been in probably 3 or 4 years. I mean, I think from top to bottom, you don't really have a pushover team. Even Mississippi State, who I don't think is great, they're not just gosh awful this year. So I think it's going to be fascinating how the final 4 weeks of the season goes. A lot of these teams play each other. Texas A&M and Texas play at the end of the year, and that's going to be a heck of a matchup. And that may ultimately be a kind of play-in game for who gets that other spot in the SEC championship.
Yeah, I like that analysis. Yeah. Preston, let's move you. I want you to talk a little bit about A&M's game last night. Let's talk a little bit about South Carolina. And as you're looking forward to playing Texas, first react to the game last night, and then let's foreshadow to that game against Texas.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about last night. It was horrible. I don't think it could have gone any worse for A&M.
Unless your quarterback got hurt.
Unless our quarterback got so we almost had it. We almost lost a more valuable piece. So A&M's best offensive player went down in Le'Veon Moss, and so I know he's not there in terms of rushing yards, but I make the argument that if outside of Ashton Gianti at Boise State, who is incredible, Le'Veon's probably the second best running back in the country. I really do believe that. I think he's incredible as a runner. He's not Derrick Henry in terms of like top end speed, but he does the things that Derrick Henry did, which is he's just so big and so athletic that he just beats on you for 4 quarters. And at some point, his 4-yard runs become 8 and 12-yard runs because of it. Like, you just get sick of tackling the guy. I have been told, or it was said last night in the end press conference by Elko, that it looked a lot worse than it was, which means I think he could be back. But that also could mean, hey, we thought his knee exploded and it's only a slight tear, and he's still done for the season. So we'll have to see there, because if they lose him, I think it gets really questionable for how A&M is going to win games going forward, because so much of what they do is predicated on this monster of an athlete that you have with him. And so losing him really did change that game. Like, we didn't make it on 4th and short because your 230-pound running back's out. Like, the next guy is still a great running back, having a great year. But I like Amari Daniels isn't Le'Veon. Like, Le'Veon gets 4th and shorts. Like, he just jumps forward and gets it. I think the big story, there's 2 stories that I think come with this. One, you mentioned A&M's QB situation and Marcel Reed and all of that. I think I don't know what A&M does QB-wise going forward. I think he could figure it out. I think it's possible we overreacted because Marcel's 2 best games were 2 games no one prepared for him to play, and he just came in and took over. The 3 games he did play when people did prepare for him, it's not going to be good, or it didn't go well. And so I think A&M had to figure that out, and I think there's now questions going forward with that performance about what you do. And then the biggest story is A&M's defense, who has been overall amazing. Like, one of the best units in college football in terms of controlling line of scrimmage, got annihilated. And I think it's it's a self-inflicted annihilation. We had 25 missed tackles, which is the most we've had since the Notre Dame game. When Notre Dame did it, we played better, but when you have guys like, and some of it's because both guys like Raheem Sanders and Lenore Sellers are hard guys to bring down. But like, you should still tackle. Like, they went for over almost 300 yards on the ground because most of which came from missed catches, from missed tackles that you didn't do. So I think that's a thing you can fix. Like, you're not going to face a QB or a running back scenario like that again. But you are still going to have to face like Texas's offensive line, who's still while probably a little overrated than what they were coming into the season, is still very good. With guys like Kelvin Banks, who I think is going to probably be a top 10 pick this year in the NFL draft. Looking forward, I don't think A&M needs to look forward to Texas. I think A&M needs to do what they were doing beforehand, which is go 1-0 every week. And win it out, because you still have to go to Auburn and play in Auburn, and don't act like Hugh Freeze ain't trying to get some points there. Like, it's not a place that you can just like go. You can't, the SEC this year, you can't just expect to win a game. You have to win a game and go in and prepare to do that. I think we did that versus South Carolina and just got our face beaten, which is what I think happened ultimately. I think you're going to have to prepare for that. This is my thought on the Texas game. I think everyone is going into that game, or pretty much everyone in the public is going into that game thinking A&M has, or at least at the beginning, A&M had no shot. Texas is going to win this game. I at the beginning of the year questioned why would you think, like, hey, we're not going to predict matchups before you play the game, right? I still am very confident that, especially before last night, I was extremely confident that A&M could come in and beat the brakes off of Texas, especially after what Georgia did to them. I think people are starting to realize Texas got somewhat of a soft schedule, and now that when they had to, and they're getting another soft schedule game because they're getting to play Florida, missing 2 quarterbacks, 5 receivers, and 2 defensive linemen. Like, are we we're gonna sit here and like applaud Texas? Like, congratulations, you beat a team that's just beaten down at home. I'm gonna give them respect. They are very good. They have They have really good receivers. I still think their best quarterback is on their bench. Like, I'm not a Quinn Ewers guy. I think Quinn's a fine talent, but you can actually see how he is like digressed as the years go on. And so I think A&M is going to be really confident. Like, we have a loud stadium. That's going to be 110,000 game or 110,000 people at that stadium, almost all of which are going to be wearing maroon. And I think it's possible with the stakes on the line, like we play good at home and we play big at home, and I like our matchups. I just do. Who the QB is I think what's ultimately going to determine that fact, and who comes out and performs at a high level. But it's going to be exciting for sure. I think I lean A&M winning that game. I will never pick Texas. Like I'm literally wearing a shirt right now. Like I'm never going to pick to win in the face of the earth. They could have all Hall of Famers on their roster, and I still wouldn't pick them. So, but I think it's going to be a good matchup. Probably the most objective opinion is it's going to be fun to watch. So,
totally.
if you don't know what you're doing November 30th, I think you need to find a TV.
That's right. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Dude, I love it, man. I think about just that matchup, that it's coming back, that they're playing again. The build up to that game could not be better. The
SEC won. The SEC won last night.
That's the thing. Rewind however many years back you want to, and it's just like this game does not hit like it does this year. So I'm looking forward to it. And Preston, we know that you're thinking A&M all the way, which you definitely should, and you should be really proud of how your team's done this year. But let me get you guys as just kind of, I guess, take, and we'll round off the episode with this. What is Hampton? I'll let you start and let our guests go last. Hampton, who do you think ultimately makes it to Atlanta to play in the SEC championship?
Ultimately, I'm going to make it quick because I really don't know how it's going to shake out. I think there are a lot of twists and turns that await. But I think Georgia and the winner of Texas A&M.
Here we go. Make a pick. Come on now.
But I'm going to go with Texas A&M winning that game at home. I'm going to go Georgia A&M in the SEC championship because, like you, I've never thought Quinn Ewers was all that, even in high school. I think last year he had a good year, but honestly, if you take the Alabama game away from him, and you can't, but I'm just saying that was by far the best he had played, and really, he was playing well this year, but then when he came back from injury, he hadn't been the same. So I think that injury's still lingering a little bit. I think it being at home, I've got A&M winning that game and Georgia being able to finish off their schedule undefeated because I don't think Ole Miss has the offensive line to hold up, and I don't think they're losing to Tennessee at home. So give me Georgia, give me Texas A&M in the SEC championship.
Yeah, that's pretty good analysis. I think this is my thought on it. So I think ultimately, if you want, before I give like my exact prediction, I think the winner or the SEC championship is probably going to come from 3 games now at this point. And so the winner, how LSU Alabama shakes out is going to be really important because if Alabama, that's a big game because if Alabama loses, their season's almost like, hey, it's not even no SEC championship. It's potentially no playoff.
It is a playoff, 100%.
Yeah, so like that's going to be really important for them. But LSU's now in the boat where if LSU loses that, it's almost the same boat for them because if LSU loses, that's no championship and no playoff. And so that's a big contender for whoever does that. I think Georgia is probably the safest, most likely bet, right? But Carson Beck has, I think, another guy who everyone was really high in coming into it. He's not that good. He hasn't been playing that good right now. I think the reason I go Georgia is similar to A&M. The leader of that team's the head coach, right? It's Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart knows how to get his guys motivated. And even the fact that he's number 2 in the nation and he's going to be heavily favored against an Ole Miss team that can beat him, he's going to find a way to make his guys feel like an underdog. And I think that's where I go. But they have a hard path. They have to beat Ole Miss, who can beat them, and then Tennessee, who can beat them. Because, well, they're not playing great either. They've only lost a game. And they still have talent everywhere, and Josh Heupel's a good coach. So, like, I think that, like, Tennessee, I think the winner of probably that game gets in. Because Tennessee, for the most part, has a fairly easy path. I think I lean, and then there's going to be the winner of the Texas, like Tennessee, A&M, and Texas have the easiest path because it's just win out at this point, and they have the schedule to win out. I think it's going to be Georgia, and then I'm going to go homer pick. I think it's A&M. I really do. And then I think if it gets to that game, it's going to be interesting because I told my dad yesterday, it's like, hey, I don't know how any team can beating Georgia in Atlanta is a hard thing to do. That's basically a home game for them.
Totally.
But A&M, I think, is out of all the teams in the conference, we're probably the most balanced roster with the least amount of weaknesses right now. Or at least the weaknesses aren't as evident. The only weaknesses that's been shown is like, hey, we have to find a way to make sure they don't tackle. If we can make them not tackle, we can win the game. So all A&M's defense has to do as of right now is tackle, which is so easy. Or you would think would be so easy. I think A&M matches up well. I think you can force Carson Beck into mistakes, and you just have to now figure out A&M's question going forward is, man, how do you figure out who's playing quarterback? That dictates a lot. Do you go Marcel Reed? Do you go Connor? I will still be a Connor Wegman fan. I think he's the best quarterback we have on roster. He just, similar to Jalen, he doesn't fit the scheme that we have. But he's still really talented, and you can do a lot off of what he does. But yeah, I think it's going to be Georgia A&M, and then, oh man, I think you can get A&M in a 2-point game. I think we could win it. I don't know. We could also go 7-5. It's happened before. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but it could happen before. But I think that's what's going to eventually. I think you're going to see you're going to see a combination of Georgia, Tennessee, Texas A&M, or Texas likely in there. LSU being the wild card. So it's a fun race for sure. You just need to. The way the college football playoff and the SEC championships, what it's going to look like, it's going to change at least 3 more times. Before it ends. I think between all of it. And so Alabama, if Alabama wins out, they're probably the 5 seed because they have the best win out of anyone that year, except for maybe Oregon.
Yeah.
So I just, what do you do is the real question. I don't pity the committee this year because they now have to make more decisions. And yeah.
Well, what I'm hearing you guys say is that we don't have any Vandy believers in the room, which is just clear and obvious that they're not making to the SEC championship.
So I'll say one thing. I'll do one thing on that. I think Clark Lee deserves an applause of what he's done at Vanderbilt. They've played so well. The fact that Tennessee could get excommunicated from the playoff because they lose to Vanderbilt at the end of the year is such a wildly insane story.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, it would be awesome, right? I think you want it for them because they're in this shambly stadium that's been under construction for 7 years. It has maybe 30,000. I know soccer stadiums in the U.S. that have more higher attendance than Vanderbilt football games. I'm pretty sure their soccer club almost has bigger. That's in Nashville has more average attendance than Vanderbilt football games, which is wild to think about. So I think I gotta give you them props. They've made it so much more fun to watch this year. So
yeah, dude. Well, it has been awesome to see them, man. And what a year for the SEC. It truly has been. I mean, how many times have we been sitting here at this point in the season, really having a couple of teams that really could make it, and not one that's a shoe-in, and we're trying to figure out who they're going to play. But I'll end by saying this, and I don't know, we won't talk about this. I'll just say something wild, then we'll call it off. It would be cool to see them as the SEC has expanded. It would be nice to see them begin to play the SEC championship at a couple of different places. I'd love to see them move it down to New Orleans. They got it in Atlanta. Move it here to Dallas. Just move it around a little bit. It would really be fun. Let them go to Nashville, play in the Titan Stadium. So there's a lot of creative things they could do, and I think we're all tired of watching Alabama versus Georgia play in Atlanta. So let's move it around a little bit.
You sound like the Texas talking heads trying to get everything to move to Texas.
That's right.
So.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen, but you never know. I don't know. It'd be nice for it to happen here at AT&T so I could go watch it because I'm probably not buying a plane ticket to Mercedes-Benz, but that's probably one of the best stadiums in the country. So yeah, I get why they keep it there.
They'll start saying we need to do it out in SoFi to expand the SEC market. We're going to try to take over California.
When USD inevitably joins the conference.
That's right. Yeah. Well, guys, hey, thank y'all so much for hopping on this. Preston, we do appreciate you, man, just giving them some A&M love because we are some homers and don't think much in your realm of College Station. And so we do appreciate it. And guys, if you listen to this podcast again, if you haven't subscribed, we'd love for you to and like the video. And for real, we've got another really fun episode coming out this week. We're going to break down the Alabama and LSU showdown that's coming up this weekend, which is going to tell a lot about a little bit of this SEC kind of shake up, really the playoff implications. But really, I think for both teams, LSU and Alabama, one team's going to walk away with a win and a pretty bright future, and the other team's going to walk away and are not going to really know how to really deem this season. So it's just a really big game. Worth talking about. So again, thank you guys for hopping on. And if you're listening to this, again, thank you as always. And the Pigskin Cafe is going to be closed for now. But until next time, Hampton messed that up last time that he did the sign off. That's why he brought me back. Until next time,
we pay your salary
on that. We appreciate it.